evening, and welcome to another exciting show. Now, tonight, live from the independent state of Barbados, is John Hamer.
Hi, everyone.
The smallest country in the world, and the second smallest country in the world is myself from Fockham Hall. So, John, sorry, got giggles. So, John, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, as you well know, Christopher, we are going to be talking about not the flat Earth, but we're going to be talking about criticising the globe Earth. There is a subtle difference there. Okay, so I shall, without further ado, or further ado, I shall launch straight into it, if I may, Chris.
Why not? That's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, okay. First of all, as I said, I'd just like to make it clear that I don't regard myself as a flat earther. I'm simply a globe Earth questioner or a globe Earth critic. Now, I believe, and I may have said this before, but bear with me for those of you who've heard me say it before, but I believe that the globe Earth is just one leg of a three-pronged psyop on humanity. Those three legs are the Big Bang Theory, theory of evolution, and the globe Earth, which, unlike the other two, is not officially classified as a theory. It's classified as a fact. But it's very important to note that they're all theories, not facts, but they're taught as absolute fact. And if anyone dares to step out of line, they're subject to extreme ridicule, and no serious debate on any of those topics is ever allowed. And quite frankly, we all need to ask why that would be. Isn't science meant to be open-minded and capable of debating theories, not closing their minds to any other possibilities as they do? But just to continue with that, I believe that all these pillars of science are together designed to convince we humans that we are just infinitesimal, unimportant specks of dust in a purely chance-driven universe, and not the powerful spiritual beings that we really are. Of course, this is all part of the control mechanism, and a major way in which the few thousand who sit up here can control 7 billion of us. Okay. So, I would also like to say to anyone who believes that the Earth is a globe, why are YouTube and other social media platforms now censoring flat Earth talks and presentations and closing down the accounts of flat earthers? Isn't this similar to how they are treating anything else that criticizes the current hoax? What does this tell us? Well, I think it tells us that they don't want the real truth to be openly discussed. What a shock. Where have we heard that story before? Chris, please could you put up picture one?
Picture one coming up. Here we go. It's all right. Right. Picture one. Voila.
Okay. Well, according to the flat Earth theory, this is for those who are not aware, by the way, the Earth is a disc, a circular disc, with the Arctic Circle in the center, which you can see in the picture there, and a wall of ice of 150 to 200 feet in height around the circumference in Antarctica, which also prevents the oceans from spilling over the edge, allegedly. Okay, so could you put up picture two, please, Chris?
Come on, picture two. He can't. Ah, there it is.
Yeah, that is a picture of the ice wall, the 150 to 200 foot ice wall that anyone who ventures close to Antarctica actually meets. Okay. So the flat Earth theory also states that it's covered by a dome, which prevents the atmosphere from escaping and seals the entire biosphere from the vacuum of outer space. This, of course, solves the puzzling issue of why Earth's atmosphere doesn't just dissipate into space. And day and night are explained by the sun and the moon being spheres measuring around 50 kilometers in diameter and moving in a circular motion above the plane of the flat Earth like spotlights, illuminating different parts of the Earth at different times in a continuous cycle of 24 hours. Okay. So, but, okay. And here's the big but. In order to believe in a flat Earth, we firstly have to accept that NASA is just a fake organization put in place to deceive us into believing that outer space exists in the form that they say it does. And I would like to think that Shannon and I, in the last couple of weeks, maybe did enough to expose what NASA is really all about. So hopefully that kind of puts that into perspective as well. I mean, on the face of it, the idea that the Earth is not a ball seems ridiculous. You know, when I first encountered that idea, I just thought these people are crazy. You know, because we just have it hammered into us from cradle to grave. You know, by organisations such as NASA and indeed the entire scientific establishment. But the only, and it is only, so-called proof that we have that the Earth is a ball emanates from the professional liars of NASA. And we know they lie about everything else, so why would that be any different? See, I personally definitely believe that outer space is not as it's portrayed. I don't have a real firm idea of what I believe it is, but I just find NASA's explanation and the typical paradigm that was sold about the solar system and the universe and all that stuff, I just find that very, very implausible. When you link it into the Big Bang Theory, it becomes even more implausible. But NASA's been caught out lying so many times, and there is so much information proving that the old Apollo program, including the moon landings, as we discussed, Shannon and I, in the last couple of weeks, were nothing more than an elaborate fakery. I mean, even the space station can be debunked as being genuine. So, how are we doing in chat there, Chris? Do you want to go to chat? I've been talking long enough.
If I can back you up on that.
Yeah.
For example, when missionaries went to China, the Chinese in certain provinces used to believe that the sun was pulled across the sky by a giant turtle. And the scientists of that time, yes, it's because the emperor said so, it must be true. So you would have the equivalent of Cox, go cross sky, you know. Sorry, I'm not very good at taking off Chinese people. I'm not taking the mickey, but it took several generations to actually get that out of them, that the giant turtle isn't dragging, or it might do, I don't know, but the sun across the sky. And I think this Big Bang Theory is like the sort of, was it 1,000 monkeys on a typewriter routine, isn't it? If they get 1,000 monkeys to jump on a typewriter, you get the complete works of William Shakespeare. But let's have a quick look in chat. Right, we've got a few new people in chat as well. Yeah. Well, we've got to give a call out to Louise, haven't we? Hello. She was early. Hope we were all having a good start to the week. All set for, isn't that lovely? Thanks, Louise. And then we got Aunt Sally. Good evening, peeps. We've got Ralph. Hello, Ralph Winter. Evening.
Hi, Ralph.
We've got Peter. We haven't had Peter before. Hello, my own account today. I did a lot.
It's the guy that was, it's my friend Peter who was Charlotte last week.
You had a sex change, mate. Oh,
yeah,
I see.
Exactly.
Won't say anything about that, you know. But Robert Dean, hi, John.
Hi,
at least you leave the toilet seat down. So terrible. Rob here. For now, I've been able to get my messages to shows the last three. Hopefully, it'll work tonight. Yes, I think it is. Got Aunt Sally. Question everything, literally everything. So many lies are being uncovered now. Well, let's face it, we're told a lie when we're children that Santa Claus exists. I'm still getting over the shock of discovering he doesn't.
What do you mean he
doesn't? Sean Hamer. Hi, fellas. No relation, I hasten to add. I'm on time tonight. Yes, no lines for you. Sean. Then we got New World Order is real. There's a new member. Hello. Silicon Valley are the self-prescribed gods of information. Spot on there. And we've got Peter again. Ice wall. What? Winter is coming. And we've got our old friend, Urban Stealth Campervan Man, the absolute fantastic artist. If you want anything drawn, painted, or anything, go to the Urban Stealth Campervan Man. Very interesting website, and he's on YouTube. Here we go. And Thousand Lies. Hi, guys. Kevin Keane. There we got here Louise. Flat Earth looks like we are in a petri dish. Well, we are definitely kept under the microscope of the powers that be. And we've got here now, I'm going to, hope you don't mind, I'm just going to skip a few because there's so many. So please don't take offense. We got Gillian. Hello, Gillian. Good evening, gentlemen, and also to Shannon.
I'll pass that on, Gillian.
All miss you tonight. Yes, Shannon's not here tonight. Love the shirt, John. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? And loved your book, Titanic, a must read for everyone.
Thanks for the plug. Checks in the post.
And the book Behind the Curtains. That's a good one as well. There's Gillian again. Just been watching a documentary on Channel 4. Channel 4. Hope you've got your sort of anti-Channel 4 spray out this afternoon on how that ship was built, and it was riveting.
Stop doing your day job, Gillian. Good effort.
Guess we'll have some chilling events on tonight's show. Yes. And what's this, Chris? We both know about Cliff and the barracks. Oh, that's another subject that I'm not sure we could afford the court fees. Could we try?
Yeah.
So hi, we're talking about Harry Webb, but that's for another program. Cliff Richard.
Yeah. Okay, moving swiftly on.
Sorry, it's not flat Earth. It's disproving the spherical.
Yeah.
Okay, globe Earth. Over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so obviously, everything is controlled by the Royal Society and Freemasonry. I mean, they hold a completely iron grip on the current accessible knowledge of what's true and what's false. So, I mean, could it just be a coincidence that people such as Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, who were some of the most important architects of the currently accepted paradigm, were all members of Freemasonry and the secret society? In the case of of Newton, I don't believe that is a coincidence at all, and it's just yet another nail in the in the coffin of those who are trying to deceive us. Actually, because everything that is false emanates from those two organisations. And is it just a coincidence that the Earth was accepted as being flat and the centre of the universe, right up until about 500 years or so ago, when Copernicus devised his solar-centric model of the solar system? At that time, everyone believed in a flat Earth. I mean, even the ancient Greeks, who got many brilliant, far ahead of their time mathematicians, astronomers, and thinkers, such as Euclid, Archimedes, Plato, Socrates, believed that the Earth was flat. So, yeah, could you put up picture 10, please, Chris?
Certainly. One moment, please.
Right. I don't know whether that's possible to read by everyone out there. But, yeah, I mean, the theories of evolution, the Big Bang Theory, atheism, the New Age movement, the New World Order, and the occult are all based on the ball Earth premise. And the spinning ball Earth hurtling around a giant sun, which is another form of pagan sun worship, is the foundation for all these satanic beliefs. Without the ball Earth, all of these theories, aka lies, fall apart and have no foundation. But what that graphic shows, it shows the Earth, it shows the movements of the Earth, because it's not just spinning on its own axis, of course, it's also turning around the sun, allegedly, and also the entire solar system is hurtling through space as well. So it's traveling in three separate directions all at once, and that's what that graphic is meant to represent. But I think there's some interesting figures in there. Sorry, Chris, if you could.
Okay.
Thanks. First of all, it turns on its axis at 1,000 miles an hour, which is fair enough. Ridiculous, but fair enough. Nextly, apparently it orbits the sun, and get these figures, 66,000 miles an hour. Okay, where have we heard this before? And it's traveling through the solar system is traveling through the galaxy at 660,000 miles an hour. So there we get those sixes again. It's okay, you can take it off now. Yeah, so they want us to believe that it's 66,000 miles an hour we're traveling around the sun at, and 660,000 miles an hour we're traveling through the galaxy at. So interesting, to say the least, those numbers. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, obviously we don't have time in a session such as this to discuss every single element of flat Earth. All I can do is just try and do a very brief synopsis of it, but I'll do a fairly comprehensive rundown of it in the book, Falsification of Science. So anyone who's got that will be able to read that. Yeah. I mean, I would always, even though we can't discuss it all in a forum such as this, I would always encourage everyone, as I always do about everything, to do some research of their own and not just take my word for it. I'd hate to think that you people sat out there just hanging on my every word. I'm sure you're not, but maybe one or two might be, and that's not my raison d'etre. I think if anybody who's interested in beginning to research flat Earth, who's not really come across it as a serious proposition, other than to be ridiculed, a good start point will be to track down the recent documentary called Level, Level, which my mate Paul and I managed to track down on YouTube after searching vainly for about 20 minutes the other evening. This presents some incredible truths and is well worth spending an hour of your time on. Okay, let's start with a few simple facts. Could you put up picture 11, please, Chris? Okay. This is an old depiction of something called the Bedford level experiments. These were a series of observations carried out along a 6-mile length of the Bedford River on the Bedford level in the county of Norfolk, England, during the 19th and early 20th centuries in an attempt to demonstrate that the Earth was flat. At the point chosen for all the experiments, because there was a whole series of them, the river was a slow-flowing drainage canal running in an uninterrupted straight line for 6 miles to the northeast of the village of Welney. And every result from those experiments has conclusively proved the flat Earth hypothesis. And although a few vested interests did try to claim otherwise, these have been thoroughly disproved using true science. The Bedford level experiments remain one of the most widely accepted examples of flat Earth proof in existence. The first one of all was carried out by a guy by the name of Samuel Rowbotham, who was president of the Flat Earth Society, surprisingly enough. This was in the summer of 1838. What he did was he waded into the river and used a telescope held 8 inches above the water to watch a boat with a 5-foot mast row slowly away from him. He reported that the vessel remained constantly in his view for the full 6 miles to Welney Bridge, whereas had the water surface been curved with the accepted circumference of the spherical Earth, the top of the mast should have been some 11 feet below the line of sight, according to standard, universally accepted Earth curvature calculations. Now, in 1901, Henry Oldham, who was a geography student at King's College, Cambridge, conducted the definitive experiment as described above again, and obtained exactly the same results as Rowbotham. But he had actually disbelieved Rowbotham, and he actually set out to prove Rowbotham wrong, but had to concede that he was correct, and it actually changed his view as well on flat Earth. So, how are we doing in chat there? Is it worth going back again?
We've got quite a bit here going on. We got good old Chris. He's back. Chris Lucas. I think actually, Chris. I think a lot of your comments have disappeared, and it's nothing to do with me on YouTube. I was going to answer one, and right. Yep, the solar system. By the way, I'm sorry about it's YouTube. They're messing about. Chris Lucas. Yep, that solar system looks impossible. I believe in a spherical, geocentric Earth. Tycho Brahe's model. Could you imagine trying to fly a rocket ship to the moon with the whole solar system moving?
Yeah, an interesting point that. And also think about the movement of the stars. I believe that the movement of the stars over a period of time proved that we're not going anywhere, because if that was the case, all the stars, given that most of the stars, or a lot of the stars that we look at, are not in our galaxy, and our galaxy is moving independently of the rest of the space, that it would be a very different model of how they actually worked in conjunction with each other, and you wouldn't see that consistency of movement. But everything would be all over the place. It just doesn't add up at all.
Well, I went to the planetarium when I was a child. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak across you there. And I've never forgotten this. And this was a long ago when Queen Victoria was on the throne. And no, I'm joking. But no, this was quite a long time ago. And I was only a little nipper, about 10, 11 years old. And I always remember we went into the planetarium and they said, going into space, it's so huge that we've only moved an inch out of our seat. If the whole world were to be explored, that's the size of space. And we are just a speck of dust, insignificant, which backs up. Remember, they were telling children, I was about 9 or 10 at the time. This
very impressionable, isn't it? I mean, they do it on purpose, to catch them young.
That's right. And I think that now we got here Peter. Hello, Pete. The Secret History of the World, Jonathan Black, Mark Booth, is a very good introduction to many of the historical people John mentions and the influence they have had on shaping, twisting history. That's interesting. And we've got Chris again. No way can a rocket keep up with the sun moving 750,000 miles per hour. That means the moon is moving with the sun at that speed. How does the rocket hit it? Well, it's a very good point, that. And I mean, this is all very, very logical.
That raises another point, going slightly off tangent, but I mean, how do rockets even work in space? I think we covered this in the last thing, but I'll just briefly mention it again for anybody who wasn't on board that one. How does a rocket motor work in a vacuum? It's got nothing to push against. The whole principle of rocketry is that there's an explosion within a cylinder which forces the vehicle forwards. But to do that, it has to push against something. That will only work in an atmosphere environment. How can it work in a vacuum? There's absolutely nothing there to push against.
Well, the other thing is gravity. I mean, water, yes, I can see water. I know water exists because I can see it. You can see it, I drink it. This is what I've got in my cup at the moment. But gravity, they say, it's gravity. Well, yes. I mean, is it magnetic? We've got magnetic boots. It doesn't. It's a sort of waffly word that doesn't really mean anything, really.
Well, as Shannon said last week, gravity is just an extension of the apple of knowledge idea, isn't it? That's that apocryphal story of Newton sitting in a field under a tree and the apple falling on his head, and where he had a eureka moment. The fact that it was an apple, I think, is significant, and Shannon made that point beautifully last week.
She did, and I personally think that story is as they say aboard, the shit of the bull.
Yeah,
it's like most stories, isn't it? Really, that comes from the establishment. And as Gillian Morgan, it all comes back to the root problem, which is the banking cartel.
I like Gillian. She's great. She's great. I mean, this is my thing. Absolutely. So she's absolutely spot on. Yeah.
And this is Kevin Keener. Sorry, that was the name of the documentary on Flat Earth.
It was called Level, Kevin. Level, just Level. And you'll have trouble finding it on YouTube, but it is on there. This is what I mean. Everything gets censored. Anything to do with Flat Earth is being censored. So, that speaks volumes to me.
That tells you, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
Now, how come, this is Robert Dean, how come the stars never alter their position? Example, the pole star.
Yeah.
If we on Earth are speeding through the galaxy, why are the distant stars not being left behind?
Great point, Rob. Yeah, absolutely spot on.
And Louise Wilcox, hello Louise. Sailors have used the stars to navigate for hundreds of years, but funny, North Star is always north, and of course you've got the pole star on the southern hemisphere. And I'll just skip a few. I hope you don't mind. Again, I'm sorry because I can't read them all out. And what we got here? We got Gillian. I mean, planets called Mars, Pluto, and Uranus. Yes, we used to laugh at that when I was at school. Come on, do do those people think we are stupid? Yes, because it was strange. You remember Walt Disney, backing up what you were saying last week about Walt Disney and NASA.
Mhm.
What did they have? Hello, Pluto.
Mhm.
And Pluto was said to be a planet that they discovered.
Yeah.
And here we've got Angela Davis. Oh, hang on. Chris is backing up. He said, rockets have nothing to push off of. That's exactly what you were saying. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The opposite reaction is the thrust coming out of it pushes off the wall. But what would thrust push off to? Off. You're quite right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
And
one.
just
Peter, actually, could you go to the Peter one, please? Just
Peter,
two up.
certainly.
I think that's important for people who want to know. I can't see the link, Peter. Whereabouts is it, mate?
To level documentary above, guys. Okay.
Is it one that we've missed out?
Is there one we missed out?
I
Okay,
can't-
just one
I can't
moment.
see it.
I'll just
tell
go
you
up.
what, why don't you? I'll find the link for you, and why don't you put the link after the show? Is it possible for you to do that?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Just got two more. Angela. Hello, Angela. Good
Hi,
evening.
Angela.
Hello, thank you very much. It's liquid sunshine here in Fockham Hall. That's rain, in other words.
It's been
And,
glorious here in Scarbados, but but pretty cool. But it's not rained, fortunately.
And Paul agrees with Chris there. But okay, right. So back to this is fascinating. So
yeah. Okay, let's go to picture 12, if we may, please, Chris.
Okay, one moment.
Okay, now what this is a picture of Monterey Bay in California. Now, looking across Monterey Bay, using the line as a guide there, that's a distance of 23 miles. Okay. Now, this was something called the Bishop experiment, as done by, strangely enough, a man by the name of Mr. Bishop. I can't remember what his first name was. But he discovered that looking from that point on the south side across to the north side, using that line with a telescope, that distance of 23 miles, he could actually see people walking their dogs, frolicking in the waves, surfing, jogging along the bay from 23 miles away. Now, all very well, you might say, if you've got a decent enough telescope, that's quite easy to do. But if you use the formula for the curvature of the Earth, which is 8 inches per mile multiplied by the square root of the distance, then the far end of the bay should have been 300 feet below the horizon from where he was looking. Now, that formula, Earth curvature formula, is generally accepted by science. This is not something I'm making up. And the maths tell us that the end of that bay would have been 300 feet below the horizon if the Earth was curved. If the Earth was 25,000 miles in circumference and curved, 300 feet below the horizon. Could you put up picture 13, please, Chris? Right, this one is kind of self-explanatory. That photograph was taken 40 miles from Chicago across Lake Michigan without a telescope. So if the Earth was a globe, those buildings should be 1,060 feet below the horizon. And it continues. Picture 14, please, Chris. Right, that's a bit more difficult to pick out, but again, it's another one of Chicago from across Lake Michigan, but even further away this time. It's from 59 miles away. And the relevant figures there are those buildings should be 2,300 feet, which is pushing on for half a mile below the horizon. And also, as in all these pictures, the building should actually be leaning away from the viewer with the Earth's curvature. Think about it. As the horizon disappears over the curve, wouldn't the buildings be leaning backwards to the naked eye, or even through a telescope?
Hmm.
Yeah. Interesting point.
You've got a really good point there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an excellent, because actually I can back that up, because I went to Dover in the 1990s, and it was the clearest day you could have for years.
Yeah.
And I've never seen France. Now, this is with the naked eye, no binoculars or anything like that. It was like looking across the River Thames, I kid you not, or a river.
I can believe it.
And you could see traffic going along the other side. It was as clear as anything. It was a one-off day, it was.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely shocked at how clear France was. Now, how far is France from Dover? 25 miles?
21 miles? I don't know.
I think it's about 24 miles. But it was very clear. You could see the buildings and everything. And that was without...
Using that curvature formula, then the French coastline should have been 300 feet-ish below the horizon.
You wouldn't see it, hardly.
You wouldn't see it.
And I could actually see the beach. I mean, it was, I just stood there with my mouth open. I couldn't believe it. I mean, if you went there now on a rainy day, you probably wouldn't see France very easily, or if at all. It looks so close.
Here's a few more. Now we're getting into the realms of longer distances now. So let me just give you a few more examples, because it's interesting. Right. Apparently, I've never been, but I have it on good authority that from Genoa in Italy, on bright, clear days, as you were just mentioning, the island of Elba can be seen an incredible 125 miles away. Now, if the Earth was a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, as they claim, then Elba should be forever invisible behind 8,770 feet of curvature. That's well over a mile and a half. Now, it's a fact that the horizon always rises to meet your eye level, no matter how high in altitude we may be. Even at a height of 20 miles, the horizon rises to meet the eye level of the observer, or a camera lens, depending on whether you're looking through a camera lens or you're through your naked eyes. Now, this is only physically possible if the Earth is a huge, flat, circular plane. If the Earth were a globe, as is claimed, no matter how large, as we ascended, the horizon would stay fixed and the observer would have to look downwards, looking down further and further to see it the higher that they went. Now, that is not my speculation. That is a proper scientific analysis of how your vision works.
Wow.
And if the Earth was a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, as NASA and the entire scientific establishments claim, spherical trigonometry says that the surface of all standing water must curve downward. Again, that figure, 8 miles per inch multiplied by the square root of the distance. This means that along a 6-mile channel of standing water, that the Earth would dip 6 feet on either end from the central peak. So if you imagine a curve over 6 miles, then central point, then it would be what was the figure? Sorry, 6 feet lower at either end. Okay, and every single time such experiments have been conducted, standing water has always proven to be perfectly level. And indeed, when you think about it, how could water not be level? How could water flow uphill? How could water just stand in that manner? It's just not possible. Now, some more interesting facts. If we were living on a spinning globe, planes would constantly have to dip their noses every few minutes to compensate for the curvature of the Earth. Think about that. If they just flew level, then eventually they would go straight across, and here's the curvature of the Earth. The plane would go like that, wouldn't it? It would just, go straight off and get higher and higher and higher. In reality, of course, they don't do this, and all pilots fly based solely on a level flat Earth model. I mean, some pilots actually retaliated to this point by saying that the plane's gyroscopes had a gadget within them that constantly compensated for the Earth's curvature. But this was found to be nonsense, actually, when some enterprising engineer took delivery of a second-hand plane gyroscope and took it to bits, examined it, and found no trace whatsoever of any such device. It was just a bog standard gyroscope that could be found anywhere. So that is just, I believe, bullshit that is being fed to pilots. Okay. Also, think about this too. If the Earth was spinning, planes travelling westwards would reach their destinations much faster than planes are travelling eastwards, or indeed than if the Earth was stationary, since the Earth is spinning in the opposite direction. If the atmosphere is spinning with the Earth, as they tell us it is, which kind of gets around that little problem for them, then planes flying westwards would have to fly faster than the Earth's spin to reach its destination. But if in reality the Earth is flat, then planes just simply fly level and reach their destination easily because the Earth's not moving. The notion that the Earth's atmosphere actually traps objects within it and causes them to move in sync with the alleged motion of the Earth is just abject nonsense and utter pseudoscience, I submit.
That is interesting. And there's something else to back you up on this.
Yeah.
During World War II, bombers at the beginning of the war were horrendously inaccurate because they used the old-fashioned navigation techniques that they had for years on ships.
Yes.
You know, and it was dead reckoning that they used. And they had a thing called a bomber's moon, where it had to be a clear night so that the navigator could get to the top and get the old sextant out and start doing calculations.
Yeah.
And then they had this idea, and the Germans brought it out, where they had this one eye, Cyclops, I think it was called, just one eye. And it was a signal that went, and the bomber flew along this signal to the target. And then the Allies had it as well, similar. Well, if the Earth was round, sure, that signal would just go boing, just go upwards, and you would sort of you would actually pick up the signal, and then you'd lose it, wouldn't you? You wouldn't carry on all the way.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, regarding airline pilots, there are a lot of airline pilots who believe that the Earth is flat. Probably not as many as believe it's a globe, but I just think the ones that believe it's a globe have just been subjected to propaganda like the rest of us have, and they don't even realise that what they're seeing out there in the vastness of the Earth as they're moving forward in the plane isn't quite as they believe it to be. But there are an increasing number of airline pilots, and in that documentary I mentioned before, Level, there are several on there who absolutely come on and say, yeah, absolutely flat, no question about it. There's no way there is any curvature there at all.
Because there was that experiment, wasn't there, in the 1930s? A chap went up in a hot air balloon. I say helium, or it was obviously more scientific than a hot air balloon. His son became an underwater explorer, and he announced that the world was flat. And there was I think it was a Heineken advert, or I may be wrong on that, but there was an advert about 10 years ago which actually showed that experiment, and you could see him going up and up and up and up in this balloon. I can't remember. It's a Swiss scientist. It's
Felix
on the
Baumgartner.
Sorry,
Felix Baumgartner.
That's probably the name. Yes.
Yeah, and now what they do, they fool us. They do this in the space stuff as well. But NASA and anybody who is trying to create the impression that the world is a ball, they use fisheye lenses. So they don't. People who've gone up there and used genuine normal lenses, you can't see an inch of curvature anywhere. But using a fisheye lens always creates the impression that the horizon is curved. And to be fair, sometimes people do actually mistake the horizontal curve of the, after all, if we're talking about a disc, there is a horizontal curve for a vertical curve, because when you look into the far distance, I've noticed when you're up in a plane, for example, looking out the window, you can see for hundreds of miles, can't you? But the Earth does look curved because of that horizontal curvature, but it's not a vertical curvature that you can see at all. And obviously there's going to be a horizontal curvature because the Earth is a round disc, allegedly. I don't know, but I'm playing devil's advocate here, don't forget everyone. So I'm not absolutely convinced, but I'm just trying to present an alternative hypothesis, if you like. So, on that basis, please do give me some leeway.
Well,
But it is plausible. I'm definitely erring massively towards the Earth being flat now that I kind of understand a lot more about how it all works.
well, I keep open-minded about everything because I don't believe anything that comes from an official source. I mean, he reminded me of a pilot a navigator who I used to work with. He was Polish and he was in the RAF during the war. He was a navigator. And he said that they were in, I think it was Libya or Morocco. And he said, look, I went, what? And they could actually see the pyramids. Now, if you look on the map, it's one heck of a long way from Libya to the pyramids.
It is.
And his friends didn't believe him until they looked out the window and actually saw that it was, it was actually the pyramids.
Just that alone, Chris. I mean, how is that possible? You talk about things like I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's something to do with refraction that the globe earthers counter these arguments with. But these things are not refraction. They're actual, proper, full, visual sightings. They're nothing to do with any kind of refraction at all. That's just an excuse made up by people who are trying to defend an indefensible position, in my view.
What about sound as well? Because during the First World War, there was this massive explosion underneath the German lines, and they said you could actually hear it in London. People actually heard the explosion in London. Well, if the Earth was flat, that is correct, but if it was round, surely that explosion noise would then go into the sky. It might bounce back a little bit, but it would diffuse.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
I'm not thought of that. Yeah.
The noise in Krakatoa was heard in
around the world, wasn't it?
Around the world, in Australia and places like that. But
yeah, I don't know the science behind that, Chris, but you make a good point. Absolutely.
It is. With shortwave radio, for example, you could pick up Australia in England if the weather conditions were right. I mean, my father used to tell me in the 40s and 50s, and he said that because he was really keen on shortwave radio, he could actually pick up Australian radio, and that was in the south of England.
Yeah, interesting.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It does make you think. Yeah, how do those radio waves stick to the curvature of the Earth? Why don't they should travel in straight lines in theory, shouldn't they? I mean,
that's right.
I'm not a scientist, as you know, and I can't explain that. But
right. Okay, let's go into. I'm trying to bring out some new people that we haven't heard before. We got here. What's this? Sorry, Peter. I mean Gillian. Oh, all right then. Right, that's New World Order wheel. We got Dan MC. Hello. It's how the ancients navigated, maybe. Now we've got someone, Gillian Morgan. So, John, you spot on with your thoughts tonight.
I do like Gillian. I really. Thank you.
Then we've got here. There's a statue of Vladimir Lenin in one of the poles. Oh, didn't know that. Lenin. And then we've got here Louise Wilcox. We live across the Wash, approximately 17 miles from Boston and Skegness, and on a clear day, we can see it. And yes, it's on a flat level. When we go up a small hill, things look like they lean.
I've never noticed that effect ever, Louise, to be honest.
No, I can't say I have either.
Your word for it.
And there's Louise again. Most old maps were drawn with the Earth looking flat until science got deeper involved in the manipulation of man. That's quite right there.
Louise. Yeah.
And then we got here Paul. Paul. When you find out what the Vatican actually is, then the theory of Jesuit deception at a pseudo-scientific level is a certainty.
Yeah.
Yes. And we got Gillian. The despicable thing is we have all been lied to for years. You spot on there, and it's still going on. We need to take back the ownership of the money supply, as this will never stop unless this happens. Yes, I think you're talking about usury. there, a subject we could do on another program. And I just wonder, it would set off all the klaxon horns in YouTube, wouldn't it, if we started talking about usury?
Yeah.
There's Peter again. I'm pretty sure the Jesuits are behind most of the elite's grand plan, so to speak. They embed themselves everywhere and take on the role to infiltrate and then destroy within. I would say it's also the people we're not allowed to criticise, who I won't say. And got Julian, all the facts so far tonight are the reasons why we are forbidding to go to the Antarctic, in my belief. Yes, you're right there.
Yeah,
and
something called the Antarctic Treaty, which forbids us from, I mean, planes have been threatened with being shot down for getting too near the Antarctic. Yeah.
Now, Sean Hamus says, you can see Mount Snowdon, the Isle of Man, and Whernside from Pendle Hill on a clear day. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
now, that's interesting. It certainly makes me think. I mean, the only thing that holds me up a little bit is what I was saying about sundials with the geometry.
Now I asked this question actually, Chris. Funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
I asked this question of someone, a friend, and I said, I have a friend, i.e. yourself, who is a sundial maker, and he believes that sundials are designed with the globe Earth in mind. And he said, and he's a bit of a flat earther, a bit of a flat earth nut. Sorry, Paul, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I meant in the sense of being, well into it. And he said that no, sundials can also be designed for a flat Earth, and in fact, there is actually not that much difference the way that the two models are integrated or contrasted, whatever you want. So the fact that you can make sundials and they work on a what I'm trying to say is, Chris, sorry,
the Nomen changes angles.
Sundials will work on a flat Earth in just the same way as they do on a globe Earth because of the actual movements of the sun and the moon.
Yes, and I think the Nomen is the sort of, I mean, where I live, it's 51.73 degrees right now for Hammer. If you go to Spain, it's 38 degrees. And the theory, looking on the globe side of it, is that when you go to the Arctic, it is bolt upright. And then when you go to the, say, the middle of Africa, it will be flat. But that, no, it has to be absolutely spot on right. I mean, when I cut the Nomen out, it has to be right on 51.73 degrees. But that is actually the angle of the sun that's coming down. So he is right. It could be flat Earth because it's the angle that the sun hits it. Now, I mean, where you are, you're a little bit further north than me, so you'll be 52 or 53 degrees.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, as you go towards the Arctic, it gets more and more. And that's the only one, that the holding thing on that. But that's interesting.
Again, I don't profess to know the science, but anyway, shall we crack on a bit? I've got once again. I'm going to run out of time.
Mate, don't worry, we're only into 48 minutes. We got it's lively in chat time. We got some new people in chat as well. Hello, new people.
Don't forget, I've got to disappear before 9:30. So,
okay. Can I just say this one thing that Peter's just put? By the way, as Art said, he said, aren't sundials an ancient invention? Yes, they are. The Egyptians had them, and testicle Earth. It's just a bit of a balls up, isn't it, Peter? According to the pure Tosspot, you're praising him up there. Neil deGrasse Tyson, the Earth is pear-shaped. Honestly, these Muppets get away with anything these days. It's pear-shaped. Well, Michael Benteen said it's square, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was joking, and it's like carry on. So sorry.
No, it's all right, mate. Don't worry. Right. There's been several other experiments, just to name two: the Michelson-Morley experiment and the Sagnac experiments. They attempted to measure the change in the speed of light due to the Earth's motion, the alleged Earth's motion through space. But after measuring in every possible different direction in various locations, they failed to detect any significant change whatsoever, which thus proved the the stationary geocentric model of the universe. Michelson and Morley were actually trying to prove that the Earth was in motion, but failed spectacularly. And back on the gravity theme again, and I think we kind of touched on this last week, but I'll just mention it briefly again. If gravity is really a force strong enough to prevent the world's oceans, buildings, people, and atmosphere from flying off the surface of the spinning ball, then surely it's also totally impossible for gravity to be simultaneously too weak to prevent small birds, insects, and children's balloons from becoming airborne and traveling freely in any direction. In my view, physicists cannot have this both ways. Also, if gravity is strong enough to curve the massive expanse of the trillions of tons of water of the oceans around a globular Earth, it would actually be impossible for fish, humans, and other creatures to swim through such forcefully held water. So, as I said right at the beginning, using the flat Earth model, the South Pole doesn't exist at all, and Antarctica is actually a gigantic ice wall extending around the entire outer circumference of the Earth, holding in the oceans like a giant bowl. I mean, as strange as this concept may sound at first, it's nevertheless a little known fact that if you set a bearing due south from anywhere on Earth, inevitably at or just before the 78 degrees south latitude, you'll find yourself face to face with an enormous ice wall towering 150 to 200 feet in the air and extending to the east and west around the entire circumference of the Earth. So Antarctica is not the tiny ice continent confined to the underside of Freemasonry's globe that it's purported to be. Antarctica literally surrounds us 360 degrees, encircles every continent, and acts as a barrier, as I said before, holding in the oceans. What actually lies beyond that ice wall? No one really knows. I mean, is it just snow and ice forever? Admiral Byrd, an American explorer in the 1940s, allegedly visited Antarctica and found a kind of green and pleasant land beyond the ice. But I mean, whether that's just a psyop, your guess is as good as mine. But thanks to numerous UN treaties, international laws, and constant military surveillance, both the North Pole and Antarctica remain cloaked in government secrecy. Both are strictly designated no-fly, no-sail zones, and there's been several reports over the years of civilian pilots and ship's captains being warned away and escorted away under threats of extreme violence. Why? That is my question. Why? What are they hiding? Interestingly, in 1773, Captain Cook, he became the first modern explorer known to have breached the Antarctic Circle and reached the ice barrier. But during 3 voyages lasting 3 years and 8 days, it was on record that Captain Cook, ship's log of Captain Cook and his crew, sailed over 60,000 miles along the Antarctic coastline and never once found an inlet or path through the massive glacial wall, and never returned to the same point. So he travelled 60,000 miles, which would be about right if the model of the flat Earth is exactly as I've been saying. So could you put up picture 3 for me, please, Chris?
Certainly. Of course, there was the Franklin exhibition as well. A picture 3, you say?
Yes, please.
Yes. Here we go.
Right. Now, what this depicts, and this is just one simple example from many. Take a flight from Santiago in Chile to Christchurch, New Zealand. Does anyone not find it strange that not one single airline provides a direct straight line flight from between those two cities, which is, as the crow flies, on a globe Earth, a distance of approximately 6,000 miles, or approximately the same as the distance from London to Los Angeles? Instead, they all follow a strange convoluted route, as you can see in the picture there, which is the red line is the actual flight path, whereas the green line would be the direct flight path. Now, every single airline flies that route. So from Santiago, you go northwards up to the east coast of the United States, right across the American continent, back down across the Pacific to Australia, and then across to New Zealand. Why would this be? Well, it doesn't really make any sense at all. I mean, that is a journey of 15,000 miles plus, allegedly, when logically it should only be one of 6,000 miles. It didn't make any sense. But if you could put picture 4 up, Chris, please.
Certainly.
When you look at that same route on the flat Earth map, it makes perfect sense, apart from the little anomaly of going across from Australia to New Zealand. That's Australia in the top at 11 o'clock there in that diagram. But that can easily be explained by the fact that Christchurch is obviously not as popular a destination as Sydney. So, you know, it makes sense economically for airlines to route through Sydney, because that's obviously a more popular destination than Christchurch. So that to me is highly significant. I mean, just look at that map. You know, if the globe Earth is real, if the globe Earth is real, why do they go that convoluted route? It just doesn't make any sense. And this is not just an example that I've just plucked out of thin air, an anomaly. This, you know, it's easy to find out. And again, I would encourage everybody to look at this stuff, because there are lots of other similar examples. That was just one that I picked at random. It's very, very strange if the Earth is a globe. That's all I can say. Like I said, there are many more examples of that. And another example of how we're being deceived is the fact that we have a distinct inability to detect or measure in any way the spinning of the Earth at up to the claimed 1,000 miles per hour in an easterly direction. You know, for example, vertically fired cannonballs and other projectiles should fall significantly due west if the Earth was spinning, but they don't, they come straight down. The spin of the Earth should significantly change the flight times of easterly versus westerly flights. I mentioned this earlier, but in reality, there's little difference in the flight times other than those caused by the prevailing wind direction, usually west to east, but not always. And again, I mentioned this before, but while I'm on this topic, how does the Earth's atmosphere stay in situ? We're allegedly surrounded by a vacuum, so why doesn't Earth's atmosphere just dissipate into space? We're always told by science that nature abhors a vacuum, meaning that it's not a natural state of affairs. So what force is actually in place to prevent the atmosphere just disappearing into space? Obviously, on the flat Earth model, we're covered by a dome, and that keeps the Earth's atmosphere in. Yeah, so, I mean, it's also an absolute mystery as to how gravity could cause the Earth and the atmosphere and everything in it to spin at up to 1,000 miles an hour, and yet hold things so tightly in place, keeping all the water in the ocean, and yet still allow a butterfly to flap its tiny wings and go effortlessly in any direction, as I said before. Yeah, so another way of looking at it is that helicopters and hot air balloons should be able to simply hover over the surface of the Earth and wait for their destinations to come to them. Yeah,
Garnet said that, didn't he?
Yeah.
On a plane, he said, "Why doesn't the plane just stay where it is, and the Earth goes around and it just lets it go?"
Yeah. And talking about our friend Felix Baumgartner, the Red Bull stratosphere guy, who spent 3 hours ascending over New Mexico. When he landed, he should have landed 2,500 miles west into the Pacific Ocean, but instead he landed a few dozen miles east of his takeoff point.
That's interesting.
Eastwardly fired cannonballs should travel significantly farther than all others, and west-fired cannonballs should fall to the ground significantly closer. Yeah, an airliner traveling at 500 miles per hour eastwards would never be able to reach its destination before it was overtaken by it from behind. Because if the Earth's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, then in actual fact the airliner is traveling at minus 500 miles an hour. Yeah, does that make sense, everyone?
It does make sense, and I was just thinking, the Franklin expedition, I think it's 1820s, 1830s, the one where they cannibalized each other because they got lost, or they never found much of an inlet, did they? They was because I'm always trying to find this passage through from one side of the world to the other.
Yeah.
They never did.
No.
It could never be done.
No. And yeah, so if the Earth and its atmosphere was truly constantly spinning eastwards at over 1,000 miles per hour, this surely should somehow, somewhere, have been seen, heard, felt, detected, measured by someone. But so far it never has been. What does that tell you? And the last point on this particular subtopic, if the Earth globe rotates on its axis at the stated incredible speed of 1,000 miles an hour, such an immense mass would cause a tremendous rush of wind into the space it occupies. The wind would travel all in one direction, and objects such as clouds would have to all travel in the same direction. But of course they don't. They travel in random directions. 1 minute they're going one direction, next minute they're going another direction. Now, we're coming to the close of the formal stuff that I have to discuss, but that's not going to stop us from carrying on. Okay, so I will just go to the end of this bit, and then we will go to chat and a general discussion. Now, interestingly, there is a Polish astronaut by the name of Miroslav Hermaszewski, who is actually a hero of Poland, which is the highest honor you can get as a Polish person. And he stated the following at the end of an interview at a conference where he was the guest of honor. The interviewer actually said to him, which took him by surprise, he said, "You've been there. Is the Earth really a sphere hanging in outer space?" And Hermaszewski said, well, he looked a bit taken off guard, first of all, and he said, the Earth's flat. I didn't expect this question. I assure you it's flat. He then anxiously looked around and awkwardly took a pretend sip from what was clearly an empty cup. He seemed very uncomfortable making the statement and seemed not to regard it as irony or a joke, as he became solemn and morose as the interview drew to a close. I asked the question, why? If you could put up picture 15, Chris, I would be very grateful.
Sorry, 1 moment.
Okay, I love this one. You know, what is wrong with this picture? Okay. Those are allegedly 2 photos taken by NASA at different times of the Earth in space. Look at the comparative size of North America in the one on the left compared to the one on the right. Somebody's telling little lies again, NASA. I mean, look at the size. Look at the size differentials there. Those depictions of the globe are exactly the same size. How can North America be that tiny in one of them and so huge in another one? It just doesn't make any kind of sense. And oh, there is no picture 16, is there? You couldn't.
Unfortunately, it wouldn't load.
Right.
I'm terribly sorry.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up now, but obviously not end the thing altogether. But I'm going to wrap up the formal bits that I wanted to say. So, what picture 16 was you have to use your imagination here, but it really was just words anyway, so it's no big deal. Okay. So, in summary, I believe that no globe equals no rotation, equals no orbit, equals no gravity, equals geocentricity, equals no Big Bang Theory, equals no evolution, equals no random chance, equals we are unique, equals we are the center of the universe, equals intelligent design, equals the presence of a creator, equals the awakening of mankind, equals the end of the NWO. Is all that not reason enough, I ask?
Yes, it is reason enough. Because you think of the lies we're told from the moment we're born.
Absolutely.
And the things that they don't tell us. But I think, why is it they're covering up what you were saying about the flat Earth?
Exactly. They never answer all these questions I've raised in the last hour, Chris. They never answer them satisfactorily. They always, they're good at giving glib answers or fobbing you off, but they never actually, actually address the real issues. I mean, if they did, great, and they could prove to me it was a globe Earth, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I really wouldn't. I've got no axe to grind. I've got no agenda to push. It doesn't matter to me whether the Earth's flat or a globe. I don't care. What I do care about, though, is being lied to. And if they can't come up with a plausible explanation for everything that I've just relayed, which I believe they can't, then I'm sorry, I shall remain skeptical, and I shall remain with my toe firmly in the flat Earth.
Well, it certainly is an eye-opener what you've said tonight, because when you think about it, I mean, if supposing somebody made up a lie saying John Hamer isn't really where he is, he's actually in Scotland, and I'm in Scotland as well, I won't give a job about that because I know where you are and I know where I am. So someone wants to blab about me being in Scotland, I can give it monkeys.
Exactly.
I can prove it without. I could go outside with my camera, and you could go outside with your camera and say, "Yeah, I'm here." But if I said, "Oh, stop that! Let's laugh at this bloke," I mean, I wouldn't even bother laughing at somebody. I just said, "Like, prove it." So I've got nothing to worry about, And this is the thing: when a person lies, they try, and it's quite interesting what you're saying about that Polish astronaut who sort of was similar
really
to
on the spot.
3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, that interview where they looked as if they sort of just witnessed a murder or something, But do you want to have a quick? We've got a loading chat.
Go to chat.
Okay, right. I don't know where. There's a hell of a lot in here. I'm just going to have to pick at random, and I do apologise. Please don't take it personal if I don't read yours out. Other people's out. Now,
Chris, I just want to say to everyone, we do read your comments, even though we don't always mention them. They're visible to both Chris and I, obviously. So, yeah.
Well, that's right. I do read through them, and I also try and answer all your comments that come after the program. Dan MC says, "God Gevelemsti channel, never heard of it, should combine with Vibe of Cosmos channel, Crater Earth and Moon Map Earth. The moon is a luminary image from our crater. I'm thinking." Interesting.
I don't know the answer, Dan, but thanks for that.
Now it says here, they found one guy, his name was Tony Chestnut. Now, this is an interesting one. Gillian Morgan, I believe the sky is blue because it's water above us and held in by a firmament which would back up the theory regarding the biblical giant flood and Noah makes you think.
Interesting, Gillian, but I'm not sure about that, but yeah.
That's very interesting, yes. Sean Hamer says, fish tank models of cosmic cycles is all they have. Yes. And we've got here the story about Christopher Columbus sailing to India but arriving in the West Indies didn't set well with me while at school. You're not telling me he should have turned left instead of right. Laugh out loud.
Interesting point about Christopher Columbus. He never actually set foot in America. He only ever visited the West Indies.
I thought it was Cuba. He landed. Was it somewhere?
Cuba is the West Indies, isn't it? Yeah, although it's not usually classed as it, but it's the Caribbean, isn't it?
I saw the film, don't you worry, with that French bloke. Louise Wilcox, YouTube chucked me off the chat. Hey? I didn't say anything naughty, but hey ho, they can do one because I can catch up on Chris's website. Yes, that's right, you go on the website. Did they check you off chat, Louise? Miserable sods. I actually, I'll get worried that people think it's me that's doing it. And it isn't. I mean, I wouldn't chuck anybody off chat. The only thing
Chris, no, you know damn well it's true.
The only thing I chuck off is dirty ladies, doldish number. Have you ever wondered why the sky above has always been blue?
I haven't, but it's a good question. Yeah, maybe I should have. Yeah.
Well,
There is some semi-plausible scientific explanation for it that I can recall from school, but that was many, many centuries ago when I was at school. So it's vanished into the mists of time, Julian.
well, when you think about the amount of things that, for example, when I was at school, if the teacher walked in, and this is true, but saying it's the same when you was at school, who built the Stonehenge? You would put your hand up and say, it's the Druids. Correct. Wrong. The Druids used it, but they didn't build it. They were there 2,000 years afterwards. It's nonsense, But it says here, what is it? Sean Hamer. The essence of all their lies believes is mere storytelling. Well, let's face it, humans lie. That is a sad fact. They will lie. And these so-called scientists, they actually, if they don't know the answer, very few of them. I mean, look at Walt Disney. Now, for years, I believed that lemmings committed mass suicide. They don't. That's not.
That was a hoax, wasn't it?
That was a hoax, and they got a bucket full of lemmings because they're such boring little creatures. They thought, well, how are we going to spice it up? And this bloke was poor sods, he was chucking them over a hill. They said, yes, lemmings commit suicide. No, they don't. They're quite nice, actually. They're quite pleasant little fellas. I don't do that, But we got loads in chat here. Absolutely incredible, I can't read them all out. There's so many here. But I think that, shall we wind this up for tonight, John?
Yeah. Unless you want to just read a couple nights, up to you, Chris. It's your show, my friend.
Well, I'm just picking them at random. Here we are. I'm starting to think that flat Earth type thing was to stop us being maybe question everything. You're right. So I very rarely say the word. Oh yeah, sorry, we've had that one, haven't we? Then we go back here. What are we? We got here. Oh, the one about Noah. Here we are. I believe the sky is blue because. Oh, sorry. We've already had that one. We've got here. Fish tank models of cosmic cycles is all that. Yes, that's right. And we've got here. I think a world that lies beyond the Antarctica is a place we should have here, and it makes you think. Are we living between heaven and hell? Is this halfway house? Well, that's an interesting point of view, isn't it? That is an interesting,
Thank you, Julian.
We got here Dan MC. Let's say it's a giant testicle show. You've got to think about testicles, haven't you? And our area appears flat, enclosed body of water. Question: how big would the globe have to be for our area to appear flat?
I don't know, Dan. Do you have the answer? I don't know.
And it is nice. Julie Morgan said, just adore you both, Chris and John. Oh, I just smiled. And you make my Monday nights so much to look forward to. Yeah, I had my other shirt deloused. Thank you very much.
Thank you, very nice.
It's best things hopping around now. Thanks, Julian. Then sundials were invented for a flat Earth model.
There you go, Mr. Chris.
There it is. That's right. Yes.
Thanks, Aunt Sally.
Now, this is an interesting one. Flat Earth can give rise to the two sun theory. There are vids on YT, YouTube, showing this, though it was all bullshit, but not so sure now. Thought it was bullshit.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't really know about that, Paul. Sorry, but yeah.
There was one.
Discount anything, to be honest.
Well, with the Sun in Nexus magazine many years ago, there was a write-up about a astronomer who believed there was an identical Earth the other side of the Sun that we can't see.
Yeah,
and every now and then we can see it. Interesting one.
The thing is, Chris, you never know what is misinformation and what's real, do you? It's so hard to discern the two.
It is. I mean, what got me is that I think when you're a child, you look at the world obviously in a different way, and you pick up on things that adults don't pick up on. And I remember we used to have a flickering black and white television when I was a kid, and you had to do gymnastics with the aerial. And I actually believed that the politicians were there to, my mummy and daddy had been very naughty, and everybody been very naughty, and the government was there to punish everybody. I used to actually believe that, because you get these miserable po-faced gits coming on like Harold was, well, you know, we got to increase taxation. I thought, all people have been so naughty, they got to be punished. I actually believe, because everybody was sort of, and when you look at the so-called scientists, the BS that they come out with, that Brian Cox, quite honestly,
that man is, well, I use the word very loosely, but that man is just beyond belief. I mean, he's just incredible.
Well, I shouldn't say this, but I'm not a violent person, but he's got the sort of face you want to push in. He's sort of, and you know, it's like the moon missions. I used to watch James Burke and the other bloke with a fog eye, what was his name, and think, oh, they're telling me the truth. Oh, and going back to when I was, say, about 10 or 11, I say, well, of course they landed on the moon. It must have been, because James Burke said so. It must be true. And if you'd have said to me, they're not landing on the moon, I'll go, oh, yes, they did. And I'd have actually aggressively defended it because I was brainwashed with it. And this is the thing. When people are brainwashed, they aggressively defend what the government tells them.
There's one or two good little comments coming in at the bottom, Chris. We'll just do a few more and then we'll call it a draw.
Certainly. Here we go. Right. Shall we start? What a Cox.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I actually spell his name with a P, actually.
And two above that, Gillian says, please give my love to Shannon. I missed her tonight. I will do that because I will be speaking to her later. So
yes, sorry, I got this one. Yes. Right, now we got here. Peter, precisely my point, hell on earth, because we have to find our way to the truth in heaven. And it says here, Tartara is hell in
Tartaria.
Tartaria, sorry. My channels are talking about it. We'll have to look at your channels. Maybe the apocalypse. Great
unveiling. Dan, would you stick us a link on, please, my friend?
Yeah, sure, please do. Is the realization we are in hell, laugh out loud. And Peter, Brian Cox is truly creeptastic.
Amongst many other adjectives.
Can we get Magnus Pike with his arms going all enormous?
Run about him.
But then we got, going up a little bit more, we got good show, guys. Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Kevin.
Jolly good show, Kevin.
Yes, that's great. Then we got here, thanks, guys. Very glad I was made aware of this show. Great info, as always. Question everything. Keep an open mind. Well, I you know, it's funny. When we were teenagers, I mean, I've fallen into this trap. You kind of defend what you've been told. Of course, this is true. And it's only, you know, I mean, hello, I've gone. Where am I? Am I still here? Oh, back again. Oh, hello. Right, I'll put here. Julian, Disney want to believe in all the codswallop. Yeah.
Disney want to believe in all the codswallop.
Yeah. Let's see, what's this? Have you ever won? Yeah, well, we've had that one. Right. Well,
I think we're just about there now, aren't we, Chris?
I think we're there. And again, thanks, John. And next week,
very welcome. Thanks to everyone out there.
Rumor has it, you know, that we might be talking about 5G.
Well, next week, interestingly, I will have Peter with me, the guy who's made all those comments there in comments. Peter is actually coming to stay with me for a few days. So
really,
yeah.
Is Shannon coming on as well?
I hope so. Yeah, she said she would. Yeah, she just couldn't make it this week at all because she's so busy. She's got quite a bit of stuff on today, I think. So yeah.
The thing is we're hoping to talk about 5G but the trouble is you've got to be a bit careful with the old censors with YouTube. Because
I know. We need to talk about that. We need to discuss that. So we'll speak in the week.
We'll have to discuss that. And but as I say, I'll just flick up your banner with, where are you? Please see John's The Falsification of History.co.uk, and also here is his Gmail if you want to contact him. That's John's Gmail. And I'll tell you something, Behind the Veil, his book is absolutely fantastic.
Behind the Curtain.
And that as well.
Don't confuse them.
Where did I get that one from? Behind the Curtain.
It's the same thing. Come on, it's fine.
Well, I'm getting on a bit. I'm at a difficult age. Right, and then we've got the home of the second smallest country in the world now. We've got Fockham Hall Radio. This is my one. FockhamHallRadio.com. And so from
the People's Republic of Barbados.
Scarbados.
Yeah.
And from Fockham Hall.
Yeah.
By the way, you get the same problems as me, and that's the BBC sending propaganda signals across your country. So, if you had something like a radio or television, you might accidentally pick them up.
I know, it's shocking.
I know, it's disgusting. Children could be listening.
Declare war on the UK, actually.
Do you find also, I find it's terrible having to mix with foreigners when you have to leave the country to go to Tesco's, mixing with all this sort of riff-raff, Well, thank you very much for joining me, John. And
it's a pleasure, Chris, as always, and I'll see you next week, of course.
See you next week. I know you have to rush off tonight. Thank you, everybody in chat. Thanks for all your comments.
Thanks for your contributions, as always. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Same time, same place next week. And whatever happens, have a laugh. Good night.
Bye.